All right, and we'll get started with those goblet squats. So holding that weight vertically at our chest and then squatting down. And remember, if a full squat is a little bit uncomfortable or hard on your knees, you can squat onto a surface such as a chair. Good job. Let's do 2 more reps together. Nice. Now our next movement is going to be that reverse lunge into a knee drive. So putting out a chair for support if we need. We're going to go back on one of our knees, bring that knee to the floor, and then bring it through and upwards. And again, if coming onto that knee is not an option for you, then what you can do is just take a large step back, bring that knee as low as you can, then come through. Good job. Let's do 1 on each side together. Nice work. Now our next movement is going to be that Arnold press. So I'm just going to sit on the floor so you guys can see a bit better. So starting with those palms facing our face, then we're going to press up and make them face away. So sorry, I misexplained that earlier, but now we got it. So palms facing our face at the bottom, and then twist your arms 180 degrees so your palms face outwards at the top. So remember, try to keep your shoulders nice and relaxed throughout this movement. And let's do 3 more together. Good job. And now our next movement is going to be those alternating front and lateral raises. So still with our dumbbells in hand, lifting them up to our sides, then out in front. And remember, we're just using strength here, so we're not using momentum like that. We want to use purely strength. Good job. And now we're going to get down onto that floor. So first we're going to start with our Russian twists. And remember, you can do these Russian twists either from seated in a chair or from down on the floor with me here. So we're just bringing that weight from side to side. And if you're in a chair, you're going to be doing the same thing, just seated in a chair. Good job. Let's do 4 more together. Good job. And now we're going to place that weight to our side. And then we're going to do those clamshells next. So we're going to have a slight bend in our knees here, about a 45-degree bend. And then we're just lifting that top leg to open our legs here, making sure that our feet stay together. And remember, if we're not coming down to the floor today, then your alternative option is to do some standing lateral raises with that leg. So we're just starting on our one side here, and then I'll let you know when we're going to switch. And let's do 2 more on this side. Good job. And now we're going to switch to our other side. And if you're doing those standing leg abductions, then you're going to start using your other leg now. So again, just lifting that top leg, making sure to keep your feet together and keeping those hips pointed straight. Good job. Let's do 3 more reps on this leg. Good work. And now we're going to move on to our backs and do those glute bridges. So lying down on our backs and our feet are planted on the floor, we're going to press those hips through at the top. If you are not coming down to the floor today, then an option for you is to do some seated leg extensions. So sitting down and extending that leg out one at a time. And for this one, I want you to alternate between your right and your left leg. But for the rest of us, if we're on the floor, we're doing those glute bridges. So remember, when you're doing those glute bridges, really trying to push through your heels to lift that bum and hips into the air. And remember, at the top, we want a straight line from our knees to our hip joint to our shoulder joint. Good job. Let's do 2 more reps together. Nice. And then before we stand up, our next movement is going to be those bird dogs. So remember, on our hands and our knees, making sure that our hands are directly under our shoulders and our knees are directly under our hips. We're going to extend our extend our opposite arm and leg out. And if you're doing this from seated, your option is to sit down and extend the opposite arm and leg out. If we're on the floor, doing that same thing, but just bringing it down to our hands and our knees. Good job. Let's do 1 more on each side. Good job. And now we're going to go through that once more all together. So starting at the top, we're going to start with those goblet squats again. So we're holding that weight vertically in our hands here at our upper body. Our feet are a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. Toes are pointed outwards. And we're just pretending to sit in an invisible chair. And if those goblet squats are a little hard on your body, you can do a sit to stand. So with a chair here, you're going to squat down till you feel that chair and then stand back up. Good job. Let's do 2 more reps together. Good work. Now our next movement is going to be that reverse lunge into a knee drive again. So grabbing our chair for support if we need, starting with those feet under our hips, and then we're just taking a big step back, bringing that knee to the floor if we can, and then standing back up and bringing that knee through. And remember, if you can't bring that knee to the floor, just taking a big step back, bringing that knee as low as we can, and then coming back up and through. Good job. Let's do 1 more on each side together. Good work. And now that next movement is going to be that Arnold press. You guys can do this standing up. I'll just sit down so you can see me a bit better. We're starting with those weights at our shoulders. Palms are facing our body. Then we're pressing up, turning those hands 180 degrees until our palms are facing outwards at the top. Then reversing that movement on the way down and just repeating through that. Good job. Let's do 2 more together. Good job. And now we're going to do those alternating front and lateral raises again. So keeping our dumbbells in each of our hands, lifting those dumbbells out to the side till shoulder height, back down, and then out in front, doing the same thing. And remember, nice and slow and controlled throughout this movement. And let's do 1 more out each way together. And good job. Now we're going to come down to that floor if that's the option we're taking. And that first option is going to be either doing the Russian twists here on the floor or doing those torso rotations seated on a chair. So if we're down on the floor, holding that dumbbell with both of our hands and bringing it from side to side, and doing that same movement if we're sitting up on a chair as well. So really trying to engage those core muscles here and those oblique muscles. And let's do 4 more together. Good job. And now that next movement is going to be our clamshells. So remember, we're lying on our side here. There's a slight bend in our knees, and then we're just lifting that top leg. And if that option is not available to you on the floor, then you're standing and doing those leg abductions. Good job. Now we're gonna switch legs. So lifting our top leg if you're doing that clamshell, and lifting your other leg out to the side if you're doing those standing leg abductions. And remember, during the clamshells, you want to keep your hips faced forward here, so you don't want them to come up over here. You want them to stay facing forward. And let's do 3 more together here. Good job. And now we're going to come onto our back side to do those glute bridges. So lying on our backs, pressing our back into the floor and bringing those feet up so they're planted nicely on the floor and there's a good bend in our knees. And then we're pushing through our heels to bring those hips up into the air. And remember, if we're not taking glute bridges as an option today, then we'll be sitting in our chairs and doing those seated alternating leg extensions. So just extending at the knee with one leg and then switching and repeating with the other side, if that's your option. Otherwise, we're doing glute bridges down on the floor on your backs. So pressing those hips up into the air. And let's do 2 more together. Good job. And now our last movement for our strength piece is going to be that bird dog again. So again, bird dogs, we're on our hands and our knees. Our knees are directly under our hips and our hands are directly under our shoulders. And we're just extending our opposite arm and leg. If that's not available to you, then from a seated position, we're going to extend our opposite arm and leg. So just like so. So that's our seated option. And otherwise, we'll be doing those bird dogs from our hands and our knees. Good job. So that's our strength for today. And then our next piece is going to be our Tabata. So let's get this set up. So our first movement for our Tabata is going to be some of those squats again. So we should be pretty familiar with them. And remember, if these air squats are a bit too much on your knees or your hips, you can always squat onto a chair here. So you do the same thing, squat down. Once you feel that chair under you, then you're going to stand back up again. After that, we have some build-ups. So a traditional build-up would be on the floor here, on our hands and our toes. And then in that plank position, then coming down to our forearms, then back up. If that's a bit too much on your elbows and your wrists, what I want you to do is against the wall, you can do some push-ups. Or if you find that wall push-ups are getting quite easy, then you could try to do some push-ups against your countertop here. And just doing those same movements, but against the countertop. Good job. And then after that, our next movement is going to be a sit-up or a hollow hold. So again, a traditional sit-up, we're going to lay it onto our backs. Our feet are planted on the floor, just like in that glute bridge. And then we're going to come up and through. So really using that core to drive us up. But if that is a bit too much motion, if that makes you a little bit dizzy, then what we're going to do is we're going to do a hollow hold. So staying on the floor, we're going to lift our forelimbs into the air and just hold here. And to make that a bit easier, you can have a bend at your knees. After our hollow hold, our next movement is going to be a bent over dumbbell row. So with those dumbbells, bending a little bit at the knees, hinging at the hips, and pulling those dumbbells up into our armpits. Then our second last movement is going to be our deadlifts, feet under our hips, and just pulling those weights along the fronts of our legs. And then our last movement is going to be a walk or run on the spot. So just simple like that. So we'll get started with that. Just give me 1 second to tie my hair back and get that timer ready. So remember, our first movement is going to be those air squats. All right. So starting with those air squats in 3, 2, 1, and begin. So remember, feet are a bit wider than shoulder width apart, and we're just squatting down, making sure our knees come over our toes and standing back up. I'm just going to turn my volume up on here so you could hear it. There we go. We're already halfway through. And 5 seconds left. Great job. So taking a 20-second rest here before we get into those build-ups. So again, taking whatever option works for you. I'm going to do the traditional option, but you guys can do push-ups against the wall or against an elevated surface like your counter. And so if we're taking that traditional option, we're just coming down onto our forearms, back up onto our palms. You could also do this from your knees instead of your toes. And remember, if you're doing those push-ups, making sure to keep that body in a nice straight line. Good job. And our next movement is going to be those sit-ups or a hollow hold. So coming down to the floor. If you're not coming down to the floor, an option for that hollow hold is going to be some leg flutters. So from seated, fluttering those legs out in front. Otherwise, we'll be down on the floor doing that hollow hold. So really try to press that core and your back into the floor here. And we're just going to hold this or do those flutter kicks for the rest of the time. So we got about 15 seconds left. Good job. And then we're coming back and standing up and getting ready to do those bent over rows. So grabbing our dumbbells. And we have a slight bend in our knees, hinging at the hips and pulling those dumbbells up into our armpits here. And remember, when you're at the top here, trying to squeeze those back muscles together like you're holding a penny between your back muscles. And try to be nice and slow and controlled throughout this movement. Good job. And then our second last movement is going to be those deadlifts, so we can keep those dumbbells in our hands. And remember, we're starting with our feet directly under our hips and our weights are out in front of our legs. And we're just sliding those weights down the front of our legs into about mid-shin, making sure that our back stays nice and flat, and then pulling them back up again. Good job. And then our last movement before our 1 minute rest here is going to be that run on the spot. So starting in 5 seconds. And running on that spot. And trying to speed it up. We're over halfway through. Good job. Now we're taking that 1 minute rest before we complete that one more time. So grab a drink of water if you need. Take a breather here. And we're halfway through our rest. So remember, our first movement is going to be those air squats again. And so we're getting ready to start again in 5 seconds. Good, and starting with those air squats. So remember, trying to make sure our knees go outwards over our toes as we come down. Keeping our chest up nice and high throughout the movement. And if that is a little tough on your knees, you can always do a sit to stand on a chair. Good job. And then remember, our next movement is going to be those build ups. So either down on the floor or on an elevated surface like the countertop or a wall. So for this round, I'm going to take the countertop version. So I'm just going to do some push-ups against that countertop for the rest of the time. So remember, if you're doing push-ups, making sure to keep your body in a nice straight line throughout the movement. Good job. And then our next movement is going to be that hollow hold. So coming down onto the floor if we're taking that option. If you're not doing a hollow hold down on the floor, then you'll be doing some flutter kicks seated in a chair. So that hollow hold, we're pressing our backs into the floor and bringing our limbs up into the air here. So really trying to work those core muscles. Make sure as you're doing this hold or those flutter kicks that you remember to keep breathing. And 5 seconds left. Good job. And then we're going to stand back up again from off of the floor or from our chairs. And we're going to get ready to do those bent over rows. So grabbing our dumbbells, feet are under our hips, slight bend in the knees, hinging at the hips, and we're pulling those dumbbells up into our armpits, making sure to squeeze our muscles at the top. And remember, nice and slow and controlled throughout this movement. If that's a little tough on your back, you can do some upright rows. So standing straight up and pulling those dumbbells up to our collarbone, making sure to pull from our elbows, but taking whatever option works best for you. Good job. Then our second last movement is going to be those deadlifts. So keeping those dumbbells in our hands. So feet are directly under our hips. And we're just going to take those dumbbells down the front of our legs, making sure to keep our back straight till we hit about mid-shin and pulling them back upwards to our hips. And just repeating through those motions. Remember to try to keep your back as straight as you can. So you want to be like a tabletop. Good job. And then our last movement before we wrap it up is going to be that running on the spot. So starting in 10 seconds. And running on that spot. So 20 seconds left, trying to speed it up here. Ten seconds left, go as fast as you can. And good job.